It's My Nerd World, a Star Wars podcast. On the show this week, got three big topics to talk about. One, Obi-Wan Kenobi details. NoNoMan12, thank you NoNoMan12, on Reddit, has pieced together the plot of Kenobi based on official comments, leaks from scoopers, The Bad Batch, and people who watch the investor video. I'm excited. That was going to be the main topic of the show. But no, Rian Johnson sat down for an interview with Soraya Wilson and dropped two big bombs. Well, okay, one big bomb, and then one bomb that it's kind of already gone off, but not a lot of people were paying attention. So they're both Star Wars related, and they're both pretty awesome, and I'm looking forward to talking about them. So I'm going to shut up for about a minute, and then we'll come back and get into it.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one. There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
My Nerd World.
Just let it in.
I'm Jon Justice, and welcome to My Nerd World, a Star Wars podcast. Glad you're with the show again this week. Remember, you can go to mynerdworld.net for all things My Nerd World. Videos are posted there, interviews with various fantastic individuals, whether it's the Lowdown Show, Edwin Lowe, or Zang This, Zanger, or Brennan Marr. It's all available there at mynerdworld.net, as is all the information and concept art and cover art that you can handle for the EMBARK science fiction space opera series, written by yours truly. If you love sci-fi and Star Wars, which you do because you listen to this show, and you like to read, why haven't you bought my books already? If you have, thank you. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't left a review, why haven't you left a review already? Go do that right now. Pause the show. Go leave a review if you like the book. If you didn't like it, just keep that to yourself. If you have left a review, thank you. I really do appreciate it. EMBARK Book 1 passed the 100 review mark this week, and I'm sitting at 4.5 stars out of 5. I'm very, very happy about that. It's available in ebook right now for just 99 cents. That's right. It's my loss leader. I get everybody in on the first book, right? And then you get the other books. That's how this whole thing works. All right. So let's get into it. I was planning on talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I ain't going to talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi because this post here from Reddit has me really excited now about Obi-Wan Kenobi, if this is indeed what the story may entail. And that was going to be the core of the show this week. So inspired that I went and watched The Phantom Menace, which I really enjoyed. I talked about it on the bonus episode a couple days ago. But we'll get into that later on because USA Today writer and author herself, and I'm not sure what the context is of how she's doing these interviews. She's not putting videos out. Maybe she's writing them for USA Today, but this is the same woman who put out the Daisy Ridley details from the interview that she did about how Ben was always going to die. The only change in the ending of The Rise of Skywalker was whether or not they were going to kiss. All right. She sat down with Rian Johnson and dropped one big bomb and then another bomb that had kind of already gone off, but it's just further confirmation. Let's start off with the big one, though. So this is on February 15th. And I'm assuming, and I keep saying this, I don't know. I'm assuming it's Soraya, Sariah. So like Ryan, I assume it's Soraya. She writes this. Is on Twitter. I'm just gonna post this now because I can see that I'm going to get a lot of requests. Yes, Ryan's Star Wars trilogy is still on. No dates or timelines because he has other projects going on, but it is happening. That's all I know about it. So first, I'm really excited, by the way. Okay, so that aside, let me get the negative stuff out of the way. she ended up having to put a block on a whole bunch of people just because she talked to Rian and posted that. That sucks, man. That's so lame that people would go and give her a hard time or make hateful comments online just because she happened to be the messenger over news that they didn't want to hear. I posted a comment. I've got my own alias on Reddit. Although if you've read any of my stories, you would find me very easily. I used one of the characters from the books. But I went on Reddit and somebody posted a comment about how I can't see how Disney, after what happened with Gina Carano, would go and rehire the most divisive guy in Star Wars, the most divisive Star Wars movie. Okay, right. And I commented, and the comment that I made was every Star Wars movie, every film that has a passionate fandom is going to be controversial now. It's just the world that we live in because of social networking and because of the ability that anonymous people have to go and make comments and share every single fleeting thought that comes into their head. Well, the person wrote back and then just went on this diatribe, which I should have expected. Posting videos of Rian Johnson talking about making controversial movies in the past and them, and the taking of those comments as if to mean that he only believes a good movie can be good if it's controversial or divides people. And I didn't take it that way personally, so don't at me. Art is subjective, and good art, for the most part, is challenging. So I wasn't that surprised by it. It still is a bummer. Because I remember when The Last Jedi came out, there was obviously instant controversy surrounding it, and mostly surrounding Luke Skywalker. There was a group of individuals that hated the film, but also were very quick to admit that Rian Johnson makes good movies. He just probably shouldn't have made a Star Wars movie. And I'm totally cool with all of that. You're entitled to your opinion, and I thought that was a really rational take. I don't see anybody making that particular take anymore. It seems like it's all gone to he shouldn't touch Star Wars, right? I don't agree. I think that there is an amazing series of stories that Rian Johnson could tell and will tell when this trilogy happens. When will it happen? It's obviously not going to be for a while, because we've got our 2023, 25, and 27 movies, and who knows, maybe the next set. I can't help, maybe after that, but I can't help but wonder if perhaps we could end up seeing something in between all that, but on Disney+. I think that I don't agree with Bob Iger, and he's not CEO anymore. Bob Iger said that they were going to keep the movies theatrical, but, not on Disney+. Well, that's clearly changing. And I think that a Rian Johnson trilogy that has the production value of a theatrical release would do spectacularly on Disney+. And I think it has the opportunity to be more well-received, better received on Disney Plus than it would be in the theater. It's just my guess. And that may not make a ton of sense, because you could say, well, if it comes out in the theater, people don't have to go see it. But there's a natural inclination and desire for us to go to the movie theater to see a film. If it's on TV, one, it's, for as weird as it sounds, you may not be as compelled to go watch it. But two, if you are compelled to go watch it, you didn't go through I got in my car, I paid money, I went to the theater, I waited in line. You see where I'm going. If you're just watching it on TV, you're quicker to dismiss it, or maybe perhaps accept it because you didn't have to invest nearly as much in it. I want to see what Rian Johnson can do in the Star Wars universe, just as further in the Star Wars universe without being tied down to an existing set storyline. In the same way that I want to see, and I can't wait to see what Taika Waititi has in store for his Star Wars movie. So this has me genuinely excited. So, can anything change? Of course. And I'm sure there are going to be people going, oh, he's the only one saying that, though. Well, okay, but he is saying it. I mean, that is a direct Are you still doing Star Wars? Yes, I am still doing Star Wars, but I don't have any dates or timelines because I have other projects going on, but it is happening. That's pretty definitive, if you ask me. And I, for one, am totally excited about it. The only thing that we know, by the way, about Rian's potential films was that originally it was said that these would take place in a completely different part of, and we'd see a part of the universe we've never seen before. So I feel like Rian's got an idea of something he wants to do, but we have no idea on timeline or anything like that. But look, I love The Last Jedi, okay? And I think Rian Johnson is an incredible filmmaker. And by the time he gets to Star Wars, he'll have even more movies under his belt than what he had when he did The Last Jedi. And that, to me, is only going to benefit what he could bring to a new set of stories in the Star Wars universe. So I was really jacked to hear that. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. Leave a comment on YouTube. I'd like to know what you think. Now, Soraya Wilson also tweeted this little nugget out. Now, there's a lot of us based off of things that Rian Johnson had said before that already knew this. However, this is further solidification, if you will, of the thoughts that most of us already had. If anybody questions whether or not Reylo were meant to be romantic, you can stop speculating. Rian absolutely saw them as a romance. I mean, there was more to their stories and growth arcs, but he saw them as romantic and intimate. Now, Rian Johnson did say back in 2018, and this is where my finger touching lovin' comment came into play back when we used to talk almost exclusively about The Last Jedi. He said it's the closest thing that we will get to a sex scene in a Star Wars movie. I know I have young people that listen to the show sometimes. So it's the closest thing to getting something like that in a Star Wars movie. And I totally agree. It was a very intimate moment, and the way that it was played was incredibly intimate. Not only does it lend, in my opinion, further enjoyment to that film and the moments that they have later on in that film, and especially the guard, right, the fighting of the Praetorian guards in Snoke's throne room, and the connection the two individuals had. But it goes beyond that. For those that have made comments about J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio throwing away everything that Rian Johnson did, I obviously don't agree with that. I don't think they did. And specifically, the conflict of those two characters in The Rise of Skywalker, in my mind, knowing that they do harbor feelings for one another, makes all the sense in the world and is on full display throughout The Rise of Skywalker. And most specifically, there's a couple of different scenes. One of the first scenes they have together during their Force Skype session, when he's on the Star Destroyer in his chambers and she's on Pisana, and he's got the mask on, serving another master, and they have this conversation. I always injected a view of Rey in that moment going, oh, gosh darn it, dude. Why do you got the mask on again? Right? A frustration level there. But also a disappointment because she wants to see him. She wants to see the humanity of Ben Solo, and she can't see that with the mask being on. The one moment, though, that this really, that Rian Johnson saying this cements this idea I had in my head, is beyond the kiss, because certainly for me, the kiss was romantic. I mentioned that in the episode where we discussed that at length. But after the duel that they had, I never thought that Kylo Ren in that moment would strike down Rey when Leia reached out to him. I think that I know that the timing wise, he hears his mother in his mother in his head, and it looks like he's going to strike, but I think that he would have held that anyways and would have stopped because he loves this woman. Rey is angry and frustrated, but she doesn't stab him through the heart. She stabs him in the side. and drops him and stops him dead in his tracks. And then what does she immediately move to do? She heals him. It's almost like in that moment, they had to do that. It's like they had to get that fight over with, right? And they had to break through that moment to get to the other side. But it's the line when Rey says, I did want to hold your hand. Ben's hand. See, I always took that as, yeah, look, dude, I do want to be with you too. I would have taken your hand back on the supremacy, before we destroyed the legacy saber. I told you, don't go, Ben, don't do this. I wanted to be with you then. I would have taken your hand just a little while ago on your Star Destroyer, but unfortunately, you told me I was a Palpatine, and you still didn't want to give this whole thing up. You still wanted me to embrace the dark side. You just did a few minutes ago before we had this duel. So yeah, dumb A, I want to be with you, but I want to be with Ben, not Kylo Ren. Let it go. Which, of course, makes the moment that he has with his father and finally giving up of the lightsaber so poignant and relevant. And then we barrel towards the end of this fantastic film, and her arriving on Luke's X-Wing and him arriving on a TIE fighter, and then everything that plays out later on. I just, it was always romantic for me, and it will always be romantic for me. And whether or not J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio saw it that way, I know that they've made comments about it being more brotherly, whatever. I am thankful that Chris Terrio and J.J. Abrams left enough ambiguity in there, right? Because Rian Johnson did the same thing. I know there are some of you who might be disagreeing that it wasn't ambiguous at all. I get that. But for individuals that didn't want to see Reylo as being romantic, and they wanted to see that more as a bond, a friendship, a dyad, in The Last Jedi, in the finger touch and loving scene, right? It's spelled out in terms of, in my view, in terms of the way that it's shot and the emotion of the two characters. But if you didn't want to see that, you could make your own headcanon saying, no, it wasn't romantic. But I'm glad to hear Rian Johnson say that. And to be quite honest, even if Rian Johnson said it wasn't romantic, my headcanon is still, and was, right? And even if he hadn't said that this was the only love scene that you would get in a Star Wars movie, I still would have made that my headcanon being those two had a romantic connection. Again, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. What are your thoughts on this? I know the second part there isn't new for a lot of you, but it is nice to see Rian Johnson expand upon it. And, of course, thoughts on his potential trilogy and whether or not maybe, what would you like to see Rian Johnson do? Is there a time period? I would like to see something that was something in the current timeline, something The Rise of Skywalker around that same time period or around the time of the sequel trilogy, maybe a different part of the universe, or moving forward. I've mentioned that a bunch. I want to see these stories move forward, and I really do think that Taika Waititi is going to be playing in a universe sometime pre The Phantom Menace, but that's just my speculation on that. One more quick point before we go to Kenobi. I just want to toss this out there in case I'm right. With Rogue Squadron, I can't seem to let go of this idea of Rogue being in Rogue Squadron and the popularity of Rogue One, and if there isn't some connectivity there. I don't know how, given that the expectation is that Rogue Squadron is supposed to take place after The Rise of Skywalker, based on some commentary, which again causes confusion because the X-Wing in the logo is a T-65 from the original trilogy. If it is in the original trilogy-esque era, Rogue Squadron, then I do think there's a possibility that this could be an odd sequel to Rogue One. I just find the fact that they're using Rogue again very, very interesting. And I can't help but wonder if there's some connectivity there, if this was a narrative move to have Rogue in both of these movies. Just because Rogue One is so immensely popular in the fandom, and A New Hope is the sequel to that. But, see, now I got me wondering, maybe this is going to be set during the original trilogy. And this is, because it makes, look, if it is, And it does take place between, say, A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, or, this is about, we can get a different angle on some of the events that took place in the original trilogy as an extension of Rogue One, taking on the name of Rogue Squadron from what Rogue One did in Rogue One. That would be kind of a brilliant move. I'm going to swim in that for a while. What do you think? I know the commentary around Rogue Squadron was that it was supposed to be a timeline after, and I can't remember what the exact quote was. We talked about this a bit on the Zing This podcast last week, which is up at mynerdworld.net, by the way, if you go to the podcast page on my website. But I wonder if I'm onto something. Maybe this does take place during the original trilogy. They had so much success with Rogue One, and people were so willing to accept that that was a precursor to A New Hope. I could see them playing in the original trilogy timeline outside of the main characters, where we end up being introduced to this Rogue Squadron group of pilots who took the name from Rogue One as inspiration. Huh. Wow. What do you think about that? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com or leave a comment on YouTube. All right, let's get into this. No Man12 wrote this up on Reddit, and I was just fascinated by what he had to say here. So, he writes this: what we can piece together about the plot of Kenobi based on official comments, leaks from scoopers, the Bad Batch, and people who watched the Investor video. We know that it's 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. The Investor video showed Vader on a throne, likely Mustafar. That has me through the roof excited. We talked about this a bit on Zang This, but it has been established in canon that Vader doesn't need his helmet to stay alive. Now, if you're going, what are you talking about, John? I'm talking about this. After the fight on Mustafar with Obi-Wan Kenobi, Vader, Anakin, right? But he's Vader now. His charred body, when he gets picked up by Palpatine, he doesn't have the helmet on. He doesn't have the helmet on then when he finds him. He doesn't have the helmet on all the way into the journey back to Coruscant. Probably had I think he had a breathing mask on. He doesn't have a helmet on when he's lying on the slab before the helmet goes on. And we know that he can take his helmet off because he had it off in The Empire Strikes Back. So while a lot of people are speculating we might get some flashbacks, and it's in these details, I'm thinking that Hayden Christensen could be in the suit. The makeup would certainly conceal him getting older in real life, but that we could see him, say on Mustafar in his castle without his helmet on, in acting. I think that would be incredible. Apparently, there's a water planet. Rumors state that Kenobi has to leave Tatooine for a short while to divert attention away from Luke. Cody and his covert ops anti-insurgent squad are the main villains, sent by Vader to locate Kenobi. Speculation on the part of the writer, but Cody perhaps finds him on Tatooine and leaves temporarily, and Obi-Wan leaves temporarily because of it. You get a chase across multiple planets. The Investor video mentions Jedi Hunter soldiers. Kessel Run Transmissions mentioned that they were informed of dark armored clones that would be played by Tamira Morrison, and these clones are the same squad who appear in the Bad Batch trailer. You can see this squad in the trailer shoot flamethrowers at what looks like Saw's men, which lines up with the anti-insurgent job. All of this has me... Look, I love the character of Obi-Wan Kenobi, but we've got a lot of Obi-Wan Kenobi already up on screen. We've got a whole trilogy of Ewan McGregor playing him. So seeing him again doesn't send shivers up my spine like it does for a lot of people, which I think is cool. I'm glad people are excited. Hearing details about what the story can entail is a completely different ballgame. This sounds rad. Cody is not a purge trooper as mentioned, likely chosen because he knows his former general. A common military movie trope, bring in the former comrade in arms to hunt down a fugitive. Casting called for multiple female and male characters as co-stars, likely to help Kenobi on his journey. The Investor video showed the attack on the Jedi Temple again during Order 66. Likely we get to see more of the purge in the temple. there have been scooper rumors that we will see Clone Wars flashbacks too. Rematch of the century. That was a comment that was made by Ewan McGregor. People were up in arms about the possibility of Vader and Kenobi fighting before A New Hope, but technically it doesn't contradict anything. If he's off planet and it lines up with Obi-Wan's and Vader's lines, he's more machine now than man, and Obi-Wan once thought as you do, which means Obi-Wan might try to convince Vader one more time. Then, in A New Hope, Obi-Wan knows it's pointless to try to convince Vader again, and Vader is ready to strike Obi-Wan down, believing he will win this third time. That makes all the sense in the world to me. I mean, that actually makes what was already said about the two of them make more sense, in my opinion. What will happen to Cody is the most interesting thing. Killing him via Obi-Wan would be heartfelt but a bit cliche. I don't think he should automatically become good either, but if he fails, maybe, and speculation on my part, Thrawn steps in and sees his military career outweighing his failures, not including failing to kill Obi-Wan twice, and transfers him to his fleet. Cody, of course, was meant to be under the command of Thrawn in Rebels Season 3 at one point. So it could still happen. An older Cody still serving in an advisor role in the Mando universe would be an interesting dynamic, especially if they're going to be bringing in Rex for Ahsoka. And I want to dovetail back to the rematch of the century, because I mentioned this on a previous episode, that in Rebels, there was a moment in Vader in the second or third season in Rebels where he talks about searching for Kenobi. So that lines up as well. Look, all of those details, even if just a few of them become true, has me really, really excited for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And honestly, what they've done with The Mandalorian has me really excited as well, because The Mandalorian has gone on to show that they're willing to go and they're willing to go there. Bringing Luke into The Mandalorian, I think, was a huge move and a bold move, but along with Ahsoka, right? But it goes to show that Disney and Lucasfilm are willing to go and do those things that a lot of us thought would never happen. When George Lucas did Revenge of the Sith, I remember there was a lot of expectations that I had of things that I wish George would do and he didn't do. Things that I thought were going to take place, like Yoda reaching out to Qui-Gon and teaching Qui-Gon, right? Showing Qui-Gon how to go and teach Obi-Wan. I'm getting this wrong. There's a moment at the end of Revenge of the Sith when you have Yoda communing, and then he talks to Ben Kenobi about how he needs to reach out with Qui-Gon Jinn. I wish that had been fleshed out a little bit more, is what I'm trying to say. I just got kind of muddled in my thoughts. There were things that George Lucas could have done to bridge the gap on a number of different issues. He didn't. The twins being born, right? And Leia still having memories of her mother, even though that would be impossible because she died right there afterwards of a broken heart, or her life force was drained by Palpatine and given to Vader, depending on what headcanon you particularly have. I wish that little things like that would have been rectified. That being said, Disney and Lucasfilm seem willing to go and do some of those more direct things and go to those places that I don't think George would have gone. And so all of that has me really excited over the potential of having Hayden Christensen with the helmet off, having them actually go and duel once again, seeing Vader's castle. Vader's castle is such a cool setting on Mustafar that I can't imagine they're not going to want to play in that world, and this series would be the perfect place to go and to do it. As always, what do you think? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. I would love to hear your comments. Either leave them up on YouTube or, again, email me, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. Your thoughts on Rian Johnson saying his trilogy is still on. Rian Johnson confirming that Reylo, in his mind, was romantic. Thoughts on Rogue One and Rogue Squadron. When do you think Rogue Squadron is going to take place, and how do you like the idea if it is in the original trilogy and this is sort of a quasi-sequel to Rogue One. I think that would be, you know what? The more I think about it, too, it would make sense that they didn't tell us specifically the timeline if that was the case. I'm going to sit on that a little bit more. I want to hear from you. What do you think? I like that idea. And certainly everything that I just mentioned with regard to the Kenobi series. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. All right, that's it for the show. Got it in a half an hour. Thank you so much for checking it out. We'll be back again next week. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you between now and then and your thoughts on what I shared with you. As always, if you haven't picked up my science fiction space opera series, EMBARK is available, books 1 through 4, in ebook, paperback, and audiobook on Amazon.com. Search for Jon Justice, book 5 on the way in the next few weeks to get started on this fantastic journey written for adults, but suitable for children 11 years old and up. It's very much in the vein of Star Wars in terms of its action and content, right? Again, I write these stories for adults, but they are totally suitable for children as well, and I hope you go and check them out and start down and embark on your own journey in my apocalyptic science fiction space opera. All right, have yourself a fantastic week. Stay warm, stay safe wherever you are, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.